The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, November 10th. I hope everybody is doing well and ready for another Yaron Brook Show. I don't know, somebody said, Lincoln says 2 YBS shows in 2 days, Christmas came early. But this is the 3rd show in 3 days. Lincoln, you missed the show. And that's just par for the course, other than when I'm traveling. So usually you get 6 shows in 6 days on a regular, normal basis. So, yeah. All right, guys. Today we're going to do a news roundup. We're going to talk about stuff that's going on primarily in Washington, D.C. It's pretty packed over the last few days, given that over the weekend I didn't do newsy shows, or kind of newsy shows, but not, political news shows. I figured we'd try to catch up on what is going on right now. Anyway, it appears that some Democratic senators panicking and therefore voted with Republicans to end the government shutdown. Now, it's not clear why they're panicking. Other Democrats are really pissed off at them, actually, because their view is that the recent elections vindicated Democrats and showed the Democrats were pretty strong, and they should have stuck with the shutdown and not given in to Republicans. But it seems like some senators, particularly former governors, it turns out, some Democratic senators, former governors, have shifted and have now voted to reopen the government. So 8 of them shifted. So the Senate yesterday or yesterday voted, I guess this morning, 60 to 40. You need 60 votes to approve the continuing resolution, which is the funding of government for another, 3 months until January. We'll do this all again in January. For 3 months under certain conditions. Again, the 40 Democrats who voted against this are pretty pissed off at their colleagues. But I think what happened was, at the end of the day, the government shutdown didn't really affect anybody. Nobody really cared until 2 things happened. One, airlines started canceling flights. That started late last week on Friday. And it looked like there were going to be significant flight cancellations. They were through the weekend, and there was going to be more this week. And my guess is that, I don't know, these senators have somewhere to go, or they heard from constituencies that said, what the hell? We've got business flights. We've got to do this. This is mayhem. This is chaos at the airports. This is ridiculous. Refund the government. It's hurting our flights. So it finally hurt somebody. It hurt a constituency. People who fly are easy to pick up the phone and call their senator or call their congressman or whatever and complain. And maybe even the congressmen and senators felt it themselves because they were at airports where the mayhem was going on. And they decided to backtrack. So that is part of it. The second part was that there was no obvious way to fund food stamps under the government shutdown. So again, there was a constituency, poor people, who were going to lose out because the government wouldn't be able to pay for the food stamps. So suddenly these constituency that started hurting, they started getting phone calls, and they caved. Now, I don't really care that much because I like government shutdowns, but they don't really matter that much one way or the other. I mean, if anything, government shutdowns prove that you can manage without the government doing a lot of stuff and manage fine. And indeed, if we only privatized, which a lot of countries have, Canada, for example, has already, if we only privatized the air controllers, the whole air control system, not only would we have more modern equipment, we'd have safer flying, But we'd also not have, this them holding this above our heads as a kind of a weapon against us. So yeah, we should privatize air traffic control. The Canadians have done it. One would think the United States could do it. And God, people don't feel a government shutdown, and maybe that's what really got them to stop it, is that people realize suddenly that maybe they don't need the government at the size that it exists. So anyway, Democrats did get a few concessions from Republicans. The big one, I think, is that the Trump administration is going to reverse all the layoffs that it did at the beginning of, if you remember, at the beginning of the shutdown. Basically, Trump said, okay, I'm just going to fire a bunch of people and never hire them again, and not hire them again. Well, as part of this deal, Trump is going to hire all these people back. That is out. So the one benefit of the shutdown was maybe shrinking payroll. That's not going to happen. They'll be hired back and they'll be paid their full salaries. I think the Democrats also got some concessions in terms of a few programs, a guarantee to fund these programs for kind of all through next year, in spite of the fact that the continued resolution only covers them until January. So they got the Republicans to agree that the welfare payments will continue throughout next year. I mean, here's the point. This is all theater. It was always all theater. It continues to be all theater. Nothing you and I will benefit from. No plus side to us. Nothing good is coming of this. So who cares, right? I mean, I don't think Americans really care that much about the government shutdown. It didn't affect many people, and they just didn't care. And so I'm happy that the government shutdown is over, really happy, because I'm flying all this week domestically. And, U.S. Airlines canceled more than 2,000 flights on just Sunday. And there were 7,000 flight delays. And I fly out tomorrow morning at 7:15 a.m., and then I've got a flight on Thursday, and I've got a flight on Saturday, and I don't want to miss any one of those. I don't want them canceled, and I don't want them delayed. So please open up the government in the next day or so I don't have to suffer from what is going on there. So, Jennifer says she's flying too. Yes, she's coming to Denver to see the debates and to participate in the LPR session. I think I'm pretty sure I sent the names in. I need to make sure that they have your names so you can attend the LPR session. All right. So yes, I will be doing a debate Wednesday night at the University of Colorado Springs. It will be socialism versus capitalism. I expect a big turnout. Hopefully some of you guys show up to support the capitalist position. There'll be a lot of socialists there. And then I'm doing a debate on that's Thursday night. Sorry. Thursday night is Colorado Springs. Wednesday is in San Francisco, and that is a debate on Christianity. And you can find information about both those debates on my website, and you can sign up and join us and be there. If you're interested, this might be a treat for you guys. On Wednesday, I'm actually going to wear a tie. It's required. It's crazy, but it's required. So I'm wearing a tie on Wednesday. I'm dreading it. I don't think I remember how to tie a tie, how to do the knot. I had that problem in Cambridge earlier. I figured it out ultimately, but it's not easy, not simple. Anyway, right? Shutdown is over. You can go back to life. If it affected you, if you were flying this week, and if you were planning to fly on Thanksgiving, airlines will be their usual awful selves. But there won't be the added issue of of the shutdown. Part of the shutdown was that Democrats didn't want to vote for ending the shutdown until they got a guarantee from Republicans that the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, in other words, the subsidies that are provided by the Affordable Care Act will be continued. Republicans are reluctant to do that. They never did away with Obamacare. They never actually proposed any alternative to Obamacare. They never actually put something together. But they want to. I don't know. I think they really want to just pretend that they care about Obamacare and pretend that they want to, cut the subsidies, but in the end, they'll subsidize it all. Anyway, Democrats wanted a vote now on that. Republicans agreed in this opening up of the government now, in this vote, they agreed that there would be a separate vote on the Obamacare subsidies that happens in January, right? Now, in the meantime, Trump stepped in on the ACA, on the Obamacare subsidies, and this is what he wrote. I'm recommending to the Senate Republicans that the hundreds of billions of dollars currently being sent to money-sucking insurance companies in order to save bad health care provided by Obamacare be sent directly to the people so that they can purchase their own much better health care and have money left over. In other words, take from the big, bad, all capitalized, insurance companies, give it to the people, and terminate per dollar spent the worst health care anywhere in the world, Obamacare. Unrelated, we must still terminate the filibuster. Oh, I was going to talk about the filibuster today. I'll talk about it tomorrow. Okay, so, God. So, first of all, notice how he talks about insurance companies. And tell me how he is different than Elizabeth Warren. Money-sucking insurance companies. Or how different he is than the guy who shot, the people who supported the guy who shot the head of, the CEO of United Healthcare. Big bad insurance companies, big bad in all caps. That's Trump, right? So this anti-insurance companies, this bias, this really, it's just horrific that he puts in there. On the other hand, it would be great. Now, do we really want to send it directly to the people? Who are we sending it to? Which people? How are they going to get it? How are we going to make sure that they spend it on insurance? Do we want to spend it on insurance? What exactly are we going to do? Now, because there's a kernel of a good idea here, some senators jumped in, to their credit, and said, okay, what we're going to propose is a dramatic expansion in health saving accounts. And what we could do is funnel all the ACA subsidy money into those health saving accounts. Let's say for poor people, we can help them fund health saving accounts, and then they could use that money, I guess, to pay their healthcare costs. It still doesn't solve how they're going to buy insurance and solve the whole insurance market. But this is a debate worth having. This is valuable stuff. This is what we should be talking about. Not about extending, this is what we should be talking about since they tried to eliminate Obamacare in, 2017, and McCain voted against it and crushed it. But what should have been proposed at the time was an alternative, and health saving accounts are clearly a good alternative, maybe including a subsidies for low-income people to buy health insurance. But then you have to completely revamp the whole health insurance market. You have to actually offer something alternative. Now, we all know what that should be. I mean, we all know. Like many of us in the free market world know what that should be. We've been advocating for it for 20-something years. There's AFCAM, the Association for Free Market in Medicine, has been advocating for this for a long time. But, basically this is simple stuff. We should get rid of employer-based insurance. We should dramatically, and by the way, if you do that, then people buy insurance individually, so they own the insurance policy, so it's their insurance policy as individual. We incentivize individuals to basically through HSAs to use HSA money to buy catastrophic insurance for big expenses, hospital stays, cancer treatment, heart attacks, the big stuff that you really need, big money for. And then make it really easy to have an HSA. HSA are great. You can put money in them before taxes. You can take them out without paying taxes. Basically, it's tax-free money as long as you pay for it for healthcare. And it really is. It's a terrific way in a mixed economy to fund healthcare for individuals, and it allows you directly, if you want to subsidize people who are poor. And again, in capitalism, we should never subsidize people or anybody. But given that we're not in capitalism, given the mixed economy, given that you have to do this to get anything passed, the government could directly, just like with education saving accounts, could directly put money into health saving accounts, let's say, and this could replace not just current insurance. This could replace Medicare and Medicaid. It could replace Medicaid immediately because poor people, instead of being forced into this horrific government insurance policy called Medicaid, they would now have money put in their HSA, and then they would decide how to allocate it to buy a catastrophic insurance policy, and then they would pay directly to hospitals and to doctors, and you would create an actual market. You've got to deregulate healthcare in all kinds of ways. For example, allow ER services in non-hospitals. In emergency room services in non-hospitals. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the emergency room that doesn't have to happen in a hospital. Allow, physician assistants to do a lot of the work that physicians do so that you can lower the price. If people are only buying catastrophic insurance, then a lot of the insurance bureaucracy goes away. It just disappears. And again, people now have a relationship directly with the doctor instead of having a relationship with a administrator who is pulled in different directions by doctors and insurance companies and everything else. There's a bunch of stuff I'm sure we'd need an expert to figure out that you'd have to do in order to do all this. For example, you'd have to completely deregulate the insurance market. And one way to do that is to provide the ability to buy insurance policy in any state you want, not limited to the state in which you reside. That would allow for competition between states to see who would deregulate the fastest. It's all doable, and it's all super exciting. Let people pay out of pocket for most medical expenses that are not catastrophic. Create a robust market that'll force doctors and hospitals and everybody else to actually advertise real prices and to compete on prices. Remove the middleman from as much as possible and allow people to get the insurance that they really need. What you really need is insurance for when things go horribly wrong. And then if you need, in our mixed economy welfare state, if you need to subsidize certain people, then you can do that with a subsidy directly into an HSA, a lot of this, you would add, ideally, right, if we were going in all this, you would add tort reform. I mean, the amount of money the doctors pay on for insurance, for liability insurance is ridiculous. So tort reform would be good. Tort reform would be good economy-wide, not just in healthcare. It would be good. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done. But notice this. You've got all these Republican senators jumping in on Trump's tweet. Where have they been over the last 9-10 years? Where have they been during the first Trump administration? Where have they been in the first year or 9 months of the Trump administration? Why isn't HSA and reforming our healthcare system towards a more market-oriented system, why hasn't that been a Republican priority? Instead, we got tariffs, and instead, we got the big, beautiful bill. Like in the big, beautiful bill, Why couldn't they have included in the big beautiful bill significant HSA reform? I think it would have qualified as being part of a tax and spend bill that only needed 51 votes. There's so many things they could have done with that bill. Instead, all they did was spend more on existing stuff and cut taxes in arguably irresponsible ways, and increase taxes by allowing for tariffs. Why is the focus on all this other stuff that's not helpful, stuff that is not I mean, people are concerned about an affordability crisis in America, and part of the affordability is health insurance. There's no question about that. Well, why aren't we addressing that? And the best way to address that, we know this, is it's to completely reform health insurance, and you do that by introducing HSAs. And just like we described, this is not rocket science at all. It's just an issue of priorities, and it does not look like Republicans have this as a priority. Now, maybe now that Trump has tweeted what he tweeted, maybe this will encourage them to do it, but I am skeptical. It would be really, really cool if that is what we got. It would be really, really cool if out of this shutdown and out of this discussion of the ACA, what we get is a Republican Party committed to introducing free market reforms in healthcare. But I think the possibility of that, the probability of that is close to zero, sadly. Close to zero. It would be cool, but it ain't happening. I mean, again, free choice. This is move towards freedom. Remember, legislation is worth voting for if it moves us towards more freedom. HSAs move us towards more freedom. It's not the ultimate. It's not where we are at the end, but it moves there. And even if it includes a subsidy for HSAs, it's still moving us towards more freedom. I've often argued that one of the ways to get rid of Medicare and Medicaid is to give people a voucher instead of to give them straight insurance, give them a voucher that allows them to buy insurance. And that voucher would be an HSA deposit into their account to then both to old people over 65 and young people, not young people, but poor people who get Medicare today. 90 million Americans, 90 million Americans get Medicaid. That's the poor people's one. And then tens of millions get Medicare. So that most of our healthcare system is government run. It just is. All right, I see Michael has come back from, yesterday he did a bunch of questions, and then today he's doing another bunch of questions. So thank you, Michael. You too can join in and join Michael and ask questions, support the show, and get to shape the actual content of the show by asking the questions. All right, so Trump is panicking a little bit about tariffs. He's panicking about tariffs because the reality is that when tariffs came up in front of the Supreme Court last week, there's a lawsuit to claim that his use of this emergency act, Economic Emergency Act, his use of that in order to raise tariffs is unconstitutional. And it really did seem like the Supreme Court was siding with the plaintiffs. It really does seem like the Supreme Court, conservatives, as conservatives it is, many of the Supreme Court justices are very uncomfortable allowing Trump to use the statute to continue kind of at his own discretion, 100% his own discretion, to raise tariffs in the U.S. There's a good chance that it gets overturned. It's a good chance that the tariffs, his use of this, goes away. Now, just before you celebrate, it is worth noting that even if that happens, right? Even if that happens, Trump will probably then try to use other statutes in order to impose the tariffs, which will just create a mess and a disaster. But he's not going to give up on tariffs. I wish that would be wow. But he's not going to give up on it. He's just going to switch from using this particular bill to something else. They'll have to sue again if they argue it's unconstitutional, and we'll go through the whole process again. He will keep shifting. He is not giving up on tariffs. He loves tariffs. Trump was pretty upset after the Supreme Court hearing because he got a sense that he might lose. He did say later in the day, he said, I heard the court case went well today. He always lies like that. But I will say this. It would be devastating for our country if we lost that. It's one of the most important cases in the history of our country. He says, and as an example, President Xi, he hit us with rare earths. Then I hit him with that tariff, 100% tariff on top of the other tariffs that they're paying. Then he called me in 10 minutes and we made a deal. Now, none of that is actually true because if you remember, the sequence is Trump hit Xi with tariffs. And Xi responded. I mean, then they negotiated and they lowered the tariffs, but there were still very high tariffs, the fentanyl tariffs and national security tariffs and other tariffs, and 45% or 35%. And then Xi did the rare earth materials. And then Trump introduced more tariffs. And then they negotiated another deal, which is only for a year long, and nobody knows exactly what the details are. So the whole thing is a charade, right? That and it's clear that the whole thing was started by Trump, not started by the Chinese, started by Trump. Trump continues, if I didn't have tariffs, the entire world would be in a depression. Now, in the past, at least, tariffs helped sink the world economy into depression. But in this case, Trump believes, or at least wants us to believe, that his tariffs are saving us from a depression. Wow. That is amazing. I mean, and unbelievably delusional. He says, I did this for the world. He's a good altruist. Don't worry. This is for the world. He's going to make the world great again. Not just America, the world great again. If I didn't put 100% tariff immediately on China because of magnets, a special kind of rare earth, magnets are not a rare earth. Anyway, we'd be closed up. I mean, the guy's delusional. He has no concept of what is going on here. He has no concept of how damaging his tariffs really are. He has no concept of how much pain he is placing on the U.S. economy for absolutely zero reason. He's completely delusional and bought into a mercantilist economic theory. He's held this since the 1980s, so it's not new. But it's just, he's just, yeah, completely bonkers when it comes to this. I mean, generally, but when it comes to this in particular. I mean, even somebody like Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee and somebody who's voted for the Trump administration in several cases, expressed deep concern about the administration's expansive interpretation of the law, warning that it risked eroding congressional power over taxation and trade. Now, Gorsuch is very concerned about separation of powers, so I'm very hopeful that he will vote against Trump on this. He said during the hearing, it's a one-way ratchet towards the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives, he said. Good for him. That's absolutely right. Again, they're not ruling on the economics of tariffs. They're ruling on the constitutionality of tariffs. Remember, tariffs in the Constitution are a power granted without taxation to Congress. And Trump is using some statute to try to claim that he now has unilateral, indefinite power over tariffs, to change tariffs, to increase tariffs. John Roberts, pushed the government lawyers about would tariffs, could the statute be allow tariffs on any product from any country in any amount for any length of time? Amy Coney Barrett also questioned the scope of the president's authority. I mean, is there a limit here? How many countries? Remember, this is supposed to be an emergency act. So what about countries like Spain and France, who are nominally our allies? How can they be targeted for tariffs under an emergency act? So, this is, again, this is the 1977 International Emergency Powers, Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, that is being being challenged here in the Supreme Court. Trump's authority to impose willy-nilly whatever tariffs he wants. So anyway, yeah, it's here's another quote from Gorsuch. I want you to explain to me how you draw the line, because you say we shouldn't be concerned because this is foreign affairs and the president has inherent authority, and so delegation off the books, more or less. And if that's true, what would prohibit Congress from just abdicating all responsibility to regulate foreign commerce, for that matter, declare war or to the president? So, if this is foreign policy and the president has no limitation on what he can do in terms of foreign policy, well, does that mean Congress shouldn't be involved in declaring war or anything else when it comes to foreign affairs? So there's clear skepticism here from the court, and Trump is panicking. So he came up with a solution, right? First, so this is what he wrote. I'm reading you his tweet. People that are against tariffs are fools. So I'm a fool, according to the President of the United States of America. I've been called worse. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world, with almost no inflation and a record stock market. So here's the thing. I think we were the richest a year ago. Nothing's really changed in that regard. Indeed, respected, we were probably more respected a year ago than now. With the senile Biden, we were probably more respected than we are now with Trump in terms of international affairs. And almost no inflation. Inflation is higher now than it was in Biden's final year. So inflation under Trump has been higher. Price inflation, CPI, has been higher under Trump than it was under Biden. So almost no inflation. He keeps saying this, and yet the numbers are the exact opposite. He keeps saying cost of food and groceries have gone down, but cost of food and groceries have gone up. And he really believes in this idea that if you lie over and over and over and over and over and over again, people start believing it. And sometimes they do. So maybe it'll work. And then he says a record stock market price. That's true. Stock market's at record highs. But I did see a graph today that shows that over the last, since Trump was inaugurated, foreign stock markets have done a lot better than the American stock market. A lot better. So yes, the U.S. stock market's up 13%, but it was up 25% under Biden for 2 years in a row. Whoa! Biden must have been a terrific president if you measure him by stock market performance. So it's hard to take this guy, this president, seriously. He continues, 401ks, highest ever, yeah. We are taking in trillions of dollars, are we? And will soon begin paying down our enormous debt, $37 trillion. That is just an unbelievable, bold-faced lie. Not only are we not paying down our enormous debt, we're actually increasing that debt by $1 to $2 trillion every year under Trump, continuously. But he says this stuff, and it's just shocking because it's just a bold-faced, unequivocal, not open to interpretation lie. We're taking in trillions of dollars? How do you get to trillions of dollars? We've taken in $150 billion in tariffs. Maybe 90 billion more than we would have otherwise. That's not a trillion. A trillion is like 11 and a half times that. I don't know what do we do with this? What do we do with this president who just boldly lies nonstop? Trillions, all that money that countries promise to invest in America, that's not suitcases of cash brought into the U.S. Treasury to pay down the debt. That is, if they ever do it, which is very dubious, it will mean investment in businesses in the United States, I hope. Not clear will ever happen anyway. He continues, record investment in the United States, plants and factories going up all over the place. Actually, plants and factories, if you take out AI, much lower pace than under Biden. Biden was an awful, horrible, pathetic, ridiculously bad president. And yet, Trump is outdoing him in badness. So then he says, here's the kick, he says, a dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everyone. This is how he wants to bribe you to shut up. You know how? Where's this money going to come from? We're running a $37 trillion debt. We run $1 to $2 trillion deficit every year. Where are you going to get the money to pay $2,000 to every person? Not clear who he's talking about. I mean, this is just nuts. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't add up. Economically completely ignorant. Par for the course. Now remember that Trump, during his first term, 17 to 21, also promised to pay off the debt. In those days, it was $19 trillion when he started. But during his presidency, the debt went from $19 trillion to $27 trillion. So he spouts stuff, he says stuff, he announces stuff, he boasts about stuff. Its relationship to reality is tenuous at best. And look, if the Supreme Court strikes down the tariffs, it's going to be a mess for the Treasury. They're going to have to return $90 billion to different businesses from which they took the tariffs. Now, note that Trump believes that somehow we have more tariff revenue, but somehow we didn't pay for it, which is, again, contradictory and doesn't make any sense. More of his contradictions. But yeah, $90 billion will have to be paid back from the Treasury to the companies. I'd rather the money be in companies' hands anyway. Then what? Then what do we do? At least we don't have tariffs. The economy will be better. Prices will actually have an opportunity to come down. So actually, the Supreme Court might be doing the Trump presidency a massive favor. I mean, Trump, because by reducing prices, people will feel better and they'll be more likely to vote Republican in the midterms. So they might be saving the Republican Party by doing this, right? Here's the Wall Street Journal about this. I'll just read you a section. President Trump is a big tariff problem. This is the Wall Street Journal editorial board. His border taxes, I like that they're calling them border taxes. His border taxes are raising prices on tariffed goods. They're unpopular with voters, and the Supreme Court might rule his emergency tariffs are illegal. His latest response? Promised voters a $2,000 tariff rebate. That was his Hail Mary pass Sunday as he declared on social media that people that are against tariffs are fools. He went on to promise various benefits from tariffs, including taking in trillions of dollars that will soon pay down the national debt. And the kicker, a dividend of at least $2,000 a person will be paid to everyone. Now, I like the way the Wall Street Journal puts this. This is a teaching moment for a high school logic class. Start with the contradiction that Mr. Trump can both pay a tariff rebate and pay down the national debt. How do you do that at the same time? Increase spending and pay down the national debt, all from the same pool of money. The annual federal budget deficit is roughly $1.8 trillion. even with the increased tariff revenue. So paying a rebate would add to the national debt, not reduce it. Mr. Trump claims of a revenue benefit from tariffs also bellies what his Solicitor General John Searle told the Supreme Court on Wednesday, in arguing that tariffs aren't really taxes and are mainly a tool of foreign policy. Mr. Searle said these tariffs, these policies, it is clear that these policies are most effective if nobody ever pays the tariff. That's pretty wild. If it never raises a dime of revenue, these are the most effective use of this particular policy. Because if you never get any revenue, that means that other countries are absorbing the tariffs. The more revenue you raise, the more other countries are passing it on to you. In other words, prices have to go up in the United States. They're not cutting their costs in the motherland of where the goods are coming from. So he added, this is the Solicitor General, that, quote, so they're clearly regulatory tariffs, not taxes. They're not an exercise of the power to tax. But wait a minute, the Wall Street Journal says. If tariffs are most effective if no one ever pays them, then how are they going to raise the revenue? Mr. Trump needs to pay those rebates. The truth is, tariffs are taxes. But Mr. Searle didn't want to admit this, lest the court conclude that Mr. Trump is usurping a constitutional power of Congress, which, of course, he is. Mr. Trump has essentially promised to pay Americans $2,000 of the border taxes they're paying in higher prices. But if tariffs are free economic lunch and their benefits abound, why offer a rebate? Shouldn't voters be thrilled about tariffs, even without a rebate? Mr. Trump is trying to exploit the fact that the tariff impact is dispersed across the economy so consumers have a hard time sorting out how much those taxes contribute to which higher prices. They do know, however, that they're paying more than they used to, which is why the election exit polls last week showed people broadly disapprove of Mr. Trump's handling of inflation in the economy. Anyway, it goes on, but you get the drift. Good for the Wall Street Journal. That's right on point. They've been really good on tariffs. I mean, so is a lot of people being good on tariffs. Really, it's only Trump and a few people around him that actually have this delusion about how tariffs work. Besant, for example, said the $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms. It could just be the tax decrease that we are seeing. So we already got the $2,000 when they decreased taxes. But they didn't really decrease taxes. They just continued the taxes we had before. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's not get technical. But Besant said you've already got your $2,000 refund, so don't worry about it. You already have it. Be happy. Celebrate. All right. Let's see. Also over the weekend, Trump floated the idea of a 50-year mortgage. I mean, basically, supposedly, the Trump administration is working on the idea of a 50-year mortgage. That is, I assume what they mean by that is that they would force Fannie and Freddie, who are still government entities, they're still in government receivership, to buy 50-year mortgages from banks who issued them at really good price, thus to incentivize the bank and, I guess, homeowners to get a 50-year mortgage. Now, 50-year mortgages subsidized by the government, because if there was a market desire for 50-year mortgages, we would have 50-year mortgages. The reason there's no 50-year mortgages is because the market doesn't really want them. Now, arguably, the government is already subsidizing 30-year mortgages, or did and has since the Great Depression, through Fannie and Freddie. And now they want to expand that to 50-year, with the idea that that lowers the cost. The cost of getting a mortgage, which addresses the concerns so many people out there have on the unaffordability of buying a home. But there's a bunch of problems with this. One, interest rates on a 50-year mortgage would be quite high, probably higher than a 30-year mortgage for the same reason that interest rates on the 30-year mortgage are higher than ones on 5-year mortgages or on floating rate mortgages. Because uncertainty about interest rates over 50 years is higher, banks want to protect themselves from the potential of inflation way out in the future. So they want higher interest rates. Higher interest rates. Now, it's true, you're spreading payments over 50 years instead of 30. So even with higher interest rates, you'll probably get lower monthly payments. That is true, assuming home prices don't change. We'll get to that in a minute. But, basically, what is this going to mean for homeowners? A, it means they're never going to own the home, right? How many people live in the same house for 50 years? You're never actually going to gain home ownership ultimately. Many people take out mortgages and they make an assumption that one day they will pay it all off and they will own the house 100%. They look forward to that. With a 50-year mortgage, at least by paying the mortgage, you're never going to get there. Also, it means that at least for the first decade, you're paying almost all interest. That is, you're gaining no equity in the home, which again will make it very difficult for you to make any money by selling the home. You still have to make a down payment. It's just with interest rates as high, with interest rates where they are, it just makes absolutely no sense to issue 50-year mortgages on a home when you only plan to live there a shorter period than that. And the amount of interest you will pay over that 50 years is just astounding. Do the math of how much interest versus how much equity you will pay over that period of time, particularly in the early years. Now, add to that giving people 50-year mortgages does not solve the supply problem, which is the fundamental problem of affordability. Let's say people get excited about the 50-year mortgage. Let's say everybody wants to take out a 50-year mortgage because the monthly payments are lower and it'll make it possible for them to pay them. By the way, all it'll do is make you a renter, right? Your monthly payments will become closer to rent at a 50-year mortgage. But okay, so it lowers your monthly payments. Might as well just rent. But it lowers your monthly payments. And so demand for housing increases. Supply hasn't increased. So what happens to prices? This is your economic quiz of the day. If demand increases for housing and supply doesn't change, what happens to house prices? They go up. They go up. So prices will go up. And therefore making home buying even less affordable. And by the way, if demand, so this is one of the most economically ignorant governments we've ever had, if this is serious. The $2,000 rebate for tariffs, tariffs just generally. This administration is I fear, this is saying a lot given the Biden administration, given, a bunch of Democratic administration. I really do think that this is the most economically ignorant administration ever. This is not sophisticated. This is not hard. This is not complicated. This is not couched in neo-Keynesian equations. This is straightforward supply and demand, first level, not even any really complicated effects. If you're going to take out a 50-year mortgage, you might as well just rent. What difference does it make? You're not going to build up any equity, certainly not in the first decade. So as a young person, just rent. So what reduces rents? Wow, there's a whole series of stories they were all based on one article. There's an article that came out today about what reduces rents. And I know it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking what actually reduces rents. And we're talking here about rents at a lower income. So what reduces rents is what's called Class C properties. So where do Class C properties rents go down? And Class C is the beginning. It's where people really feel the angst. It's increased supply, true, but supply of what? Supply of what? Here's the beauty of it. Class C rents go down when Class A supply goes up. Class A is luxury. Right? The more luxury condos you build, I mean, up to a point, the lower rents on Class C go down. Some examples of this. Right now, Class C rents in Denver are down 13.9%. In Naples, Florida, 13.5%. In Austin, Texas, 13.3%. In Phoenix, 10.5%. San Antonio, 7.2%. And Dallas, Class C rents are down 6.5%. What do all these cities have in common? Right? Notice there are no cities there in California or in New York. What do they have in common? They just absorbed a massive wave of new apartments, but not Class C apartments. Right? Not Class C apartments. Class A apartments, luxury apartments. Now, in cities that didn't see a big wave of supply, Class C rents are going up. 20 cities saw Class C rents go up more than 3%. 19 of those 20 cities had supply below the national average. Now, why is an increase in supply of Class A apartments lowering rents in Class C? Well, this is what's called in real estate the musical chairs effect. When a brand new luxury apartment opens up, where do the new renters of that Class A apartment come from? Well, they leave a slightly older apartment and go into the new luxury apartment. That slightly older apartment now frees up. And the owner has to attract new renters. Now, he can't attract them at the old rent because this new luxury apartment's competing. So he has to lower the rent a little bit. So he lowers the rent a little bit. Now, who's going to come to fill in this new, still Class A, but slightly older apartment? Well, people who maybe live in Class B apartments, but now the rent has gone down in this old Class A apartment, and they can move into it. Which means that their apartment in a Class B building now has to be repriced downwards in order to attract Class B older apartments into this apartment. You can see how it trickles down. So you constantly are moving older, smaller apartments. And it keeps pulling people from older, smaller apartments into newer, larger apartments. And people living in Class C apartments get the biggest benefit. So, for example, in Austin, when it went down 13.3%, that's just Class C. All the other classes went down, but by smaller amounts. And it just grows as you go lower in the income, in the type of apartment. And of course, for Class C apartments, who are spending a huge chunk of their paycheck in rent already, it's a massive benefit. Massive benefit. So, and to fill those apartments, landlords have to cut prices a lot because the people who at the margin can move up have moved up. So this is not trickle-down economics. This is, as I've described it many times, this is a waterfall effect. This is a flooding economics. This is, waterfall economics. So the point is that if you build new apartments, even, God forbid, luxury ones, rents go down throughout the entire spectrum. And indeed, they go down more in the cheaper, older apartments than they do in the luxury apartments. So You know, if you really want to solve the affordability crisis in terms of rents in New York and San Francisco, in the places where they're still going up, it's easy. Build massive quantities of luxury apartments. And, you know, when you have lots of new apartments, you get falling Class C rents. When you have very few new apartments, you get rising Class C rents. Same effect the other way around. Right? New supply at the top creates relief at the bottom. Now, it's also true, and again, in spite of the fact that people deny this, particularly voters are denying it, people experiencing this deny it, some of you even deny it, wages pretty much across the income spectrum have been growing faster than rents for 3 straight years. The reality is more people can afford apartments now, more people can afford rent right now, than ever before. Or at least in the last decade or so. And this can become even bigger if we build more. By the way, Denver, which saw the biggest decline in Class C rents, 13.9%, has supply way over U.S. average. The only city that saw declining C-class rents and does not have supply over U.S. average is Macon, Georgia. Don't know what's going on in Macon, Georgia. Maybe demand has shrunk. But in every other city, Denver, Naples, Austin, Fort Myers, Florida, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Phoenix, Arizona, Boulder, Colorado, Asheville, Sarasota, Florida, rents, Class C, dropped substantially. So that was a quick economics lesson. The evidence for this is unambiguous. Again, if you care about housing costs, if you care about affordability, more freedom is the solution. Isn't that amazing? And imagine if somebody actually ran on that. I'm running on a freedom agenda to lower your cost of living, because I know you care about the cost of living. And by the way, people are very concerned about fertility. We're not having enough kids. Well, there's a new study out about the relationship between housing costs and fertility. And so this is a conclusion they come to. Now, rising costs since 1990 in housing are responsible for 11% fewer children, 51% of the total fertility rate decline between the 2000s and the 2010s, and 7 percentage points fewer young families in the 2010s. So all that is explained by rising housing prices. Large families are more cost sensitive, and so rising housing costs disincentivizes fertility. Take it for what it is. That is a study that was published recently. I got the quote out of Marginal Revolution. People are very concerned about fertility. One way to at least address it is more freedom. Because more freedom lowers costs. Lower costs provide more disincentives, less disincentives to have children. I think I got that double negative right. All right, quickly on same-sex marriages, good news coming out of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declined today to reconsider same-sex marriage decision. That was a 2015 ruling. They had a case in front of them that could have given the opportunity to review this again, and they refused to take it. And by doing so, the lower courts, their basic decision from 2015 to allow same-sex marriages holds, and that is good news. This is a case brought by Kim Davis. I don't know if you remember Kim Davis. She was a county whatever, and she refused to do gay marriages, and she was fired as a consequence, and she's suing. So it's related to all of that. The only justice that we know of that is explicitly called for revisiting the marriage ruling is Clarence Thomas. He obviously lost out on this particular decision, and the court just didn't take it up, and therefore it is mute. Gay marriage is safe, at least for now. Hard to tell for how long, but at least for now it is safe. All right, let's see. Finally, the BBC. People over the last, I'd say, year or so have suddenly discovered something that I remember knowing in the 1980s. What's that, 40 years ago? I remember distinctly thinking about this in 40 years ago. They're suddenly discovering that the BBC has a left-wing bias. I mean, I'm shocked. Who would have expected? Well, I remember this. I think the thing that struck me, actually, it's 50 years ago. I think the first time I realized this was in the 1970s, during a particularly bad period of Palestinian terrorism. And, children were killed, and it was really bad. And the BBC insisted on calling them guerrillas and refused to call them terrorists. And this was true in the 70s and then during the Second Intifada in the early 90s. And I remember, these guys have a bias against Israel, and generally following their coverage of economic issues, of Margaret Thatcher, of a lot of other things, it was clear that the BBC has a left-wing bias. Well, a scandal has erupted after the BBC Director General, Tim Davis, and BBC News head, Deborah Turners, announced their resignation last week, following revelations that they had, the show Panorama that BBC has, had actually edited Trump's January 6th speech to make it sound like he was even more encouraging of violence than he actually was. Now, Trump has threatened to sue them for, I think, $2 million or something like that, or $2 billion or whatever. But generally, the consequences are that the top people at BBC have fired. But the reality is that the report that came out that identified this, and a report, by the way, written by BBC researchers, was not just about Trump. It argued that the BBC's U.S. election coverage overemphasized Kamala Harris and overemphasized its campaign issues like abortion, and it had very little coverage of things like immigration or the economy. That they constantly use partisan language when discussing the election, partisan in favor of the Democrats. They constantly exaggerated or outright invented cases of racial discrimination, for example. They falsely claimed that there was an ethnic penalty in car insurance, where there's no evidence of that. They made bogus claim about ethnic minorities having more insecure jobs, no evidence of that. They did not highlight significant stories about, for example, the cost of asylum, both in the US and in the UK, immigration asylum. Their history programs had a tendacious account of slavery, anti-Western civilization bias. And they were very one-sided on trans issues, even when in the UK, leading authorities came out against transitioning. They sided with the left on this issue. They basically relayed Hamas propaganda throughout the war, sometimes presenting openly pro-Hamas figures as if they were objective. And then they dismissed complaints over and over again in an arrogant and cavalier manner. Now, that's not me. That is what the report says. And the reality is that, with the exception of this resignation, the BBC shows no signs of acknowledging the problem, let alone addressing it. It's still trying to deflect and claim that it represents the mainstream, that it's not biased at all. This is typical of kind of the left. I once remember talking to an NPR, a senior person at NPR at a conference, and he was there, and I said something completely innocently, straightforward. I thought it was obvious that NPR is biased, left biased. And he looked at me and said, "No, we're not." And I think he really believed that. I think the left thinks that they are the middle. I think the left is just as delusional just as delusional as the left is just as delusional as Trump is, in the sense that they think this is the middle. Now Ian says, can't we expect a similar internal report from Fox News? That's not the point. The point is the BBC is a tax-funded enterprise. This is a government news show. This is why I'm really happy. NPR, one of the best things Republicans have done recently is get rid of funding for NPR and PBS, because there should be no government-funded media. And then you want to be biased, be biased. That's okay. But you can't be government-funded and have such an extraordinary bias. And look, this report came out, but this is after 50 years that I know they're biased. I know they're biased. And the reality is that it's stunning that it's taken 50 years for this to be corrected. I mean, again, the solution is not a revamping of the BBC. It's not firing people. It's not changing editorial standards. The solution is privatizing it, getting the government out of funding it. And then, you can be as biased as you want to be. You can be Fox News. You can be CNN. You can be whatever you want. You can be MSNBC. You get to decide on the level of bias, as long as people are willing to fund you and watch you and support advertising. I mean, one of the things that came out is BBC's senior international editor says, yeah, he got it wrong in Gaza hospital report. This is early on in the war where the BBC claimed that Israel had bombed the hospital. On the other hand, he says he has no regrets on his reporting for Gaza. And then that was a big story at the time that really shaped a lot of the coverage about what was going on in Gaza in a perverted, distorted way. And yet, no regrets, no regrets. All right, guys, that is the news for this Monday, November 10th. There's a lot more news, but, that's enough. And I will try to do a show tomorrow. We'll see if I can pull it off, but I will try to do a show tomorrow, and I'll try to do a show Friday. For certain, there will be no shows on Wednesday and Thursday. All right, let's see. We've got some stickers. Wes did a $50 sticker. Thank you, Wes. Wes is pretty consistent with $50 and sometimes $100 stickers. So thank you, Wes, who helps get us to our targets. And then, let's see, we didn't get many stickers today. We got a lot of questions. Anonymous user, Carl Meisenbach, Jonathan Honing, those are all sticker people. And then the rest, I think, are all questions. So thank you, guys. Thanks for making it possible. And I remind you that we've got goals. We're in our second hour. We're $98 short. No, what? That's not right. We're... what am I getting wrong here? We are $102 short of our goal. $102 short of our goal, which is not a lot, given that it's only 3:09 here in Puerto Rico. We shifted. You guys shifted clocks on us, so the gap is now larger. So $102 short of the second hour goal. I hope we can make that. That it's important to make those. We've made them over the last few days. So let's try to make our goal today. 3-hour goal would be even better, but let's certainly make the second hour goal. So we're looking for 102, two $50 questions. We'll make it up, or five $20 questions will make it there. And I assume we'll get $2 from somebody. So please consider asking a question about anything. And it's a great way for you to shape the show. Get me answering me talking about what you want me to talk about. It'll be good. So thank you to all the super chatters. Please become a super chatter. And if not, go to patreon.com and become a monthly contributor. I've got a goal for the end of the year. How many Patreons? I think I need 11 or 12 new subscribers to Patreon to get me to the goal. So please consider becoming a subscriber on Patreon and getting us there. All right, Clay just came in with $100, which basically gets us to our 2-hour goal. So thank you, Clay. really, really appreciate it. Thanks, he says. Thanks for your content, Yaron. Thank you, Clay, for the support. That is great. By the way, I just want to remind you, we will have a New Year's Eve show, as we always do. It'll be our big fundraiser for the year. We'll start it early on New Year's Eve, and we'll go for as long as it takes to raise the amount of money that I set. I will set the goal based on kind of my, what it looks like on an annual basis and where we are. So I will let you know, but it'll be a lot of money. I know somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 will probably be the goal for one show, which is a lot of money. So please take that into account. Hopefully, many of you who don't listen live on a regular basis will pop in at least to support the show and to show your appreciation, value for value, and to get us into the new year, 2026, on a great footing. So it will be there. It will be there. It will be there. So we will be having the show as we do every year. Some people have asked if it'll happen. It will happen, and it'll be fun. And I might have some people, like I might have Greg Salmieri drop in, or Alex Epstein, or Epstein, right? Epstein, and some others just dropping in and saying hi and maybe spending a few minutes with us while we do it. So we'll make it not just me talking for 4 hours, because these shows are probably going to last 4 hours to get to the kind of numbers. But we should definitely we'll make it as long as it needs to be. I booked dinner late, so we can go late, right? It's New Year's Eve anyway. Dinner should be late. All right, reminder of some of our sponsors for the show. For the show today, we do have a new sponsor today, and that is Michael Williams. Michael Williams is just become a sponsor. Michael is a friend, and I work with Michael on something called Defenders of Capitalism Project. Michael is the owner and the guy who runs the Defenders of Capitalism Project. As part of that, I'm actually speaking at the leadership program of the Rockies on Friday. I've been speaking for Defenders of Capitalism Project for about 20 years. It is basically a project dedicated to producing educational content on capitalism. And we have worked on it together. I've been speaking in Denver, in Connecticut, in Wisconsin, basically helping people understand and defend the moral foundations of a free society. Michael has also been a longtime contributor to Ayn Rand Institute and a supporter of the show and a consistent voice of reason and freedom. So check him out. Check out Defenders of Capitalism. DefendersOfCapitalism.com. One word, DefendersOfCapitalism.com. The Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor, and they are encouraging people to sign up for Ayn Rand Conference Europe, which is going to be in the beautiful, just gorgeous city, great food, great people, and a beautiful city of Porto, Portugal. We have the Institute has scholarships for students and young people generally. Anybody under 34 years old counts as young. 34 years old counts as young. So you can apply for a scholarship. As long as you're 34 years old or younger, you can apply for a scholarship. But they're also selling adult tickets. So if you'd like to come as an adult, I think you'll have a blast. I'll be there. Onkagate will be there. Nikos will be there. Ben Bear, and I'm missing somebody. I can't remember whom, but I'm missing somebody who's also going to be there. Oh, Taut's Funny. Taut's Funny will also be there. The dates are April 17th to the 19th in beautiful, amazing Porto. It's not a bad flight, even from the East Coast, if you want to come. I don't know if there are direct flights to Porto, but you can get a direct flight from Lisbon and then hop up. It's less than an hour flight from Lisbon. So you can also, as always, get a Yaron Brook Show discount. discount. And you get a 10% discount by using 26YBS10 as the checkout code. 26YBS10. Alex Epstein. Alex Epstein is also a supporter, a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show. Alex is the leading authority out there in the world on issues of climate change, issues of fossil fuels, and energy and electricity more broadly. So really, really important right now, particularly with the massive expansion of AI and the building of AI data centers. This is going to become more and more of an issue, and including the fact that electricity prices are going up. In Europe, they're ridiculously high, but the US, they're going up as well. He is the guy, because he's also out there in front of Congress and in front of the Trump administration, advocating for more liberty, more freedom, which is the way to go if we want to reduce costs and if we want to increase freedom. So follow Alex, alexepstein.substack.com. And finally, we've got Hendershot Wealth Management, Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's, wealth.com/YBS. They have a really cool product that can reduce your capital gains liabilities if you have appreciated stock or about to sell a company. You can find an interview I did with Robert Hendershot on my playlist under sponsors. And of course, you can go to hendershotwealth.com/YBS and gain information there and sign up for a one-on-one discussion about your particular financial situation and how they can be of help. All right, let's jump in. I'll remind you again to sign up for Patreon. I'm hoping to get 11 or 12 new Patreon subscribers supporting the Yaron Brook Show between now and the end of the year. And I don't just mean people who are moving from PayPal to Patreon, but new monthly supporters, 12 new monthly supporters between now and the end of the year. So 6 in November, 6 in December, or any other combination will work as well. Maybe we can get 12 in November and then not worry about it in December. But 12 new Patreon subscribers would be amazing at any level. At $10, for example, you get a ad-free, advertising-free version of the podcast to your Apple podcast or whatever podcast app you use. You'll get an RSS feed to that podcast to be able to listen to the show ad-free. All right, let us start with $50 questions. Actually, Remo did $60. Remo says, thoughts on the proxy voting advisory firms, institutional shareholder services, and Glass Lewis. I don't know Glass Lewis very well. It seems to me that they often fail to remind shareholders that their foundational purpose of a business is to maximize shareholder value. Yes, I find them overly conventional, overly swayed by the politics of the moment or the hot thing, DI, ESG, when those are relevant, and not focused on shareholder wealth maximization. So I don't think they do justice to shareholders. I never followed their advice when we voted proxy statements. When in my hedge fund, we made our own decisions. We made our own evaluations, not based on their recommendation. But I know a lot of companies do, because it's a way to shrug responsibility, right? Oh, the institutional shareholder services said so. So a lot of people, a lot of institutional investors do that, and that is unfortunate. So yes, I don't have concrete examples. I haven't followed it closely, but they do not only not remind, but they don't make recommendations that are based on maximizing shareholder wealth. They often make recommendations based on what is politically correct at the moment. It would be interesting to do some studies and see whether their recommendations, for example, have changed with the shift in administration, the shift of focus of each administration. That would be interesting. Jacqueline says, "Hey, Yaron, thank you for the $50 first. As long as my flight doesn't get canceled, I'll be in Denver area from Thursday to Monday. And I was planning to come to your talk in Colorado Springs." Excellent. It's not a talk, it's a debate. "I'll send you a separate email, but if anyone else wants to go, maybe they can email you." Yes. I think also there might be some people planning to do a lunch with me and some of the members of the local objectives community, and maybe some of the people coming in for the debate on Friday. Now, I'm not sure this is going to happen. I'm waiting to hear from them. But I am available lunch on Friday to meet with people if they want. I can't commit to dinner or anything after the debate. That's going to be a very long day. I'm flying in from San Francisco early in the morning, and then I have to drive down to Colorado Springs, and I have to drive back to Denver, and then morning of Friday I've got LPR. So it's going to be busy. But after LPR, I'm going to be pretty free. So potentially lunch Friday is in the cards. Hopefully, I'll wait to hear from the people in Denver about their organization. But yes, email me if you're coming. That'll be fun. Be fun to see you guys. Michael, does ominous parallels predict America will become Nazi Germany, or only if trends are not reversed? I don't see them being reversed in the slightest, although no one saw Millet coming either. You never know. Well, first, you can't. As long as people have free will, trends can be reversed. Trends can change. And remember, Ominous Parallels was written in the 1980s, and I think Leonard at the time thought that it was going to happen sooner rather than later. So that is sorry, distracted for a second there. So you have to remember that nothing is for certain when it comes to human beings, because they can change their minds, and things can change, cultures can change. So did he predict? He predicted in the 1980s. He thought it was going to happen soon. I don't think he thought it was going to happen 50 years in the future. It's already 40 years in the future, right? And it hasn't happened yet. So these processes usually take longer than we expect them to. They usually are slower than what we expect. But he did predict. He predicted that we become, fascist. Not Nazi Germany, but fascist. He didn't think we would go communism, and that's consistent with his dim hypothesis. He didn't think the authoritarianism would come from the left. He thought the authoritarianism would come from the right, from a fascist right, a Nazi Germany right, or a right, a kind of fascist right, ultimately wrapped in the flag and in a cross. You never know, but it does seem to be happening, right? I think, no, it's not going to happen anytime soon. There might very well be a big backlash against the right now, and you might get Congress will turn to the left next election, and there might be a Democratic president soon. That is, you cannot extrapolate long-term trends from short-term phenomena. You have to look at the long-term trend. And the long-term trend is towards more authoritarianism, and the long-term trend on the right is greater and greater authoritarianism, greater and greater power centralized, and greater role for religion and for nationalism on the right. And I think that's where the right is heading. And then the question is, how long does it take the American public to buy into it, and whether we get a charismatic leader, not like Millet, but a Millet of fascism who rallies everybody around the flag. Maybe it'll never happen. There is hope for that, but but we will see. We will see. Again, no guarantees. Michael, is Kant the reason trolls are popular? Why is trolling cool? That's why Nick Fuentes is popular. It's not his ideas; it's his ability to antagonize people so effectively. That's part of it. I think at the end it is ideas, but. He clearly gains an audience through the trolling. There are a number of people out there, very good trollers. I'm not a very good troller, obviously. It's one of the reasons my following is relatively small. But is Kant responsible for trolling? I don't know. I mean, that's a reach. You could argue that because Kant ultimately is responsible for the emotionalism in the culture, because he basically undermines reason, and therefore people have given up on reason and they become emotionalist, and emotionalists are susceptible to trolls and respond to trolls and are more likely to do trolling. So you could make that argument, but it's a little, it's not very effective to think about trolling Kant. It's too big of a gap, too big of a ideological leap. Take smaller steps. trolling is made possible to a large extent by the internet, by social media. It's made possible by a progressive education, by emotionalism. And you can get to Kant down the road. I mean, he is ultimately, you can draw all bad ideas back to Kant, but it's not always that useful to hold it that way. Thomas, good to see you, Thomas. So I know you've discussed this, but what is the meaning of price inflation versus monetary inflation? I mean, price inflation means prices are going up. Generally, prices are going up. Now, again, even price inflation, tariffs, for example, don't cause price inflation because price inflation is prices overall are going up. Now, arguably, prices overall go up only when you have monetary inflation. You can have a short period of time where a supply shock, for whatever reason, supply just crushed. Let's say there's a massive power outage, the entire USA, electricity's cut, but then you'd also have a demand shock. So you'd have to think about scenarios where you have a supply shock but not a demand shock. Well, the government gives you all checks. So there's no demand shock. You still have money, even if you're not working. But supply is down, COVID. But those are short term. Supply will adjust, as will demand. So price inflation is usually a phenomenon of monetary inflation. But monetary inflation is hard to measure. Monetary inflation is more money. Now, what is money? We've talked about this many times. How do we measure money? What counts as money? Is it M1? Is it M2? Is it M3? Is it some other measure of money? Do we count Bitcoin? Do we count gold? What is money? And how do we measure it? Now, Friedman said inflation is always a monetary phenomenon, but it doesn't have to be always a monetary phenomenon. So, for example, inflation can go up in a sense of prices can go up, even in the absence of money increasing, if people expect money to increase in the future. For example, because the government is running huge amounts of debt, and they think that the government will print money in order to pay off that debt. So the phenomena of prices going up is complex. Monetary inflation, by the way, can also manifest itself without price inflation. That is, you can have an increase in the amount of money, but all that money flows in a particular direction, into housing, into the stock market, although I don't think that's sustainable, into certain areas, and that arguably is what creates bubbles in certain places or huge increases in prices, in relative prices, in prices of some goods and not in others. So monetary inflation has many evils. So it doesn't affect prices all at the same time in the same way. Price inflation mostly is just CPI or PPE or whatever the people say, or whatever the way you're measuring it. It's overall price increases. Usually, if that goes on for a long time, that is caused by monetary inflation, by printing more money. But printing more money in a fiat electronic money world is not easy to see, to observe, or to measure. So what we use is the proxy. Prices went up. All right, Remo says, how was your tour in Europe? It was good. It was good. We did events. I mean, all the events were good events, I thought. Reasonable attendance in all of them. The one in Oslo was the biggest. We probably had over 200 people there, all young, 15 to 25. So in that sense, it was a fantastic audience. I'm looking forward to finding ways to engage with that audience again in other circumstances. So that is great. And to have 200 kids there and talk about morality of capitalism when they've never heard anything like it is really good. So that was I really enjoyed that. The other talks all had 35 to 40 or so people, which is pretty good. And then in Lisbon and Porto, we had 3 events that all kind of varied, but we had 60 in one event, 150 in the other, and a dinner, which was very good, with about 40 people. So all the events in Lisbon were really, in Portugal were really good. So yeah, it was a terrific tour. A lot of positive comments, a lot of opportunities for more engagement, for more interaction. Yeah, I'm looking forward to 2026 and what we can do in 2026. This is a good beginning. And yeah, by the way, if you would like me to come to your country, to your school, to your state, to your city, to whatever, and you can arrange a audience, don't worry about a fee for now. If you can arrange an audience with expectation of, let's say, 50 people, particularly if they're young students, then I will come. So, it's up to you to arrange it and to schedule it with me, and we will make it happen. We will make it happen. Remo, he says, this is for your show yesterday on anti-Semitism, one of the most important topics of today. Thank you. Yeah, definitely is, sadly. Who the hell thought that we'd need it? Vihab, if a pharmaceutical company discovered a cure for diabetes, but hid it to keep selling treatment drugs, doesn't that show the need for government-run healthcare without profit motive? God, I mean, I hate these kind of questions because they're these kind of hypotheticals. You can make corporations out to be evil in these kind of questions in an endless amount. I mean, what if the government keeps it? What if the government discovers a cure for diabetes, but it realizes that it's gonna cost a lot of money, and it will be able to only give it to some people, and it doesn't want the hassle of having to deal with inequality. Some people get the drug and some people don't because it doesn't have enough drug. It won't be able to produce enough drugs to give it to everybody because the price is so high. So they would hide it. Does that mean that we shouldn't have government-run healthcare and instead we should have private healthcare? I mean, no one concrete, fictional, made-up example is going to prove one way or the other anything. The reality is that we should have private-run healthcare for the simple reason that you have no right to take from some and give to others, to redistribute wealth, to tell doctors what treatment they can and cannot give patients, and at what price it should be dictated. The reason to have private healthcare is not because of any particular drug under any particular circumstances. It's because the only moral way to engage with other people is through voluntary interaction. And the only system that allows voluntary interaction is a private system. And under that private system, all kinds of things will happen that you specifically might not like. Now, the probability that a pharmaceutical company would do such a thing is almost zero. Maybe it is zero. For so many reasons. I mean, this is a big discovery. It could charge a lot of money from a lot of people. It could make a killing. If it keeps it secret, its competitor will probably discover this. I mean, most research that pharmaceutical companies are doing is not hidden in secret. They publish papers, they're discussing it, scientists are debating it, and then they try to be the first ones and then get a patent. But, other companies are going to discover this. So why would you sit on it? And this also assumes that pharmaceutical companies don't really care about the health of their patients. The goodwill that they would generate with such a drug, maybe they'd lose some income on the other drugs that they were selling before, but now they're going to get this big one-time boost that cures diabetes, which then allows them to invest in a lot of other type of diseases, versus think of the bad press that they would get if they were hiding the drug. It's just not a tenable position to have. Would it not leak? Would scientists who care about the health of people not leak the information that this was available? Why? Because they're so loyal to the pharmaceutical company, they would never leak anything? So, I've heard this before. Auto companies invented cars that run on water, but they hid it because all companies paid them to hide it or something like that, right? All companies discovered motors that could run on water, but they hid it so they could continue selling oil. Really? You think that is doable? You think that is sustainable? So no, first of all, it doesn't show anything. It doesn't show the need for anything. You can't make up an example out of thin air in science fiction and say, look, this proves that individual rights don't matter. All the other benefits we know of private healthcare don't matter because I've got one example. Plus, the example is unrealistic. Robert, Saturday's episode, you were unusually fired up, encouraging of all the rest of us to be too. Trolls, Trump, Mamdani, Carlson, Fuentes. A perfect storm. Your response was startling but motivating. Wow, I don't remember it that way, but I'm glad that's... I heard a lot of people comment positively on that show, and that's great. I don't remember having more energy than I usually do, but I guess it came across that way. So good. Thoughts on Gilbert and Sullivan? You know, nice. Neither in terms of story or particularly in terms of music, not as great as the operetta composers of Austria-Hungary of the time or previous time. So good, but not as great as the original operettas. I also find it funny to hear operetta sung in English. But the music is just, it's cute, it's nice, it's good. It's just not great. When great is in operetta, Carmen or Leher or Strauss. Roland, a donation towards your tie. Buy a nice one. I'm not buying one. I've got old ties that I've worn in the past, so no reason to buy a tie. No ties. But thank you for the donation. James, what is the Asian show you mentioned about happiness and love? You said it was one of your favorite shows. I remember it goes into the past and present. I mean, Mr. Sunshine, the Korean show that addresses the conflict between love and patriotism. But I don't remember happiness, what happiness has to do with it. I don't remember. The only one I can think of right now is Mr. Sunshine. Oops, Michael. Has OCON served to grow the objectivist movement, or is it merely an expensive way to preach to the choir? Wow, there's a false dichotomy if ever you heard one. I think it serves both purposes. It serves to grow the objectivist movement, not so much directly in the sense that new people come there and then they get convinced by objectivism, because that's not the target audience. It serves to grow the objectivist movement because it serves to motivate people who are already part of the objectivist movement or are thinking of entering the objectivist movement to become more engaged, more involved, to support the institute, to go out there and become active in supporting the institute. So it serves that purpose. It serves to help educate and help serve to motivate a community of people that are crucial to the spreading of objectivism. So it spreads objectivism, grows the objectivist movement indirectly by motivating people in the movement and also encouraging people to join the movement. So you might be somewhere alone somewhere holding these ideas, and you come to OCON and it inspires you that there are other people. You maybe gain friends. You discover what the institute is doing. You join a movement, a community, rather than just being alone, and that serves immense value. But the idea that we either preach to the choir, I don't consider anything we do they're preaching, and I don't consider you the choir. I can see you all thinking individuals, and what we do is speak about topics. Sometimes it's new material. Sometimes we encourage you to think differently about things. We're never just telling you what you already know in simplistic ways. And again, you are not a choir. You are thinking individuals. So I think it's a very derogatory way of thinking about OCON, which I hope you will change your mind about. Michael, when are you having Jason Rines on? I will have him on. I don't know when. The interviews are being scheduled by Angela, and when schedules fit. Michael, are these Democrat victory is a good sign the American people are rejecting Trumpism, although the Democrats won in largely blue areas. Will middle America reject MAGA in the midterms? I do think it is a good sign that people are rejecting Trumpism. The polls show that people swung away from Trump, and that a big motivation was tariffs and just Trump generally, and Hispanics shifted away from Trump, and that suggests that they hate what they're seeing from ICE. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a positive and an indication of what's to come. We'll see. I mean, there's a whole year before that happens, so who knows? Michael, did you see Elon Musk quoting paragraphs from Atlas Shrugged in response to criticism about his $1 trillion pay package? I did not. I'll look that up. That is exciting that he's quoting Atlas Shrugged. Not too surprising, but exciting. And yeah, good for him. He got the pay package he wanted. Now he has to live up to it, because he won't get any of that money if Tesla doesn't just become one of the greatest companies in human history. We'll see if it can pull that off. Michael, National Socialist to the right, International Socialist to the left, cognitively incapable, emotionless everywhere. Sadly, that is a pretty good description of the world in which we live politically. Michael, has the demise of New York City always been exaggerated? Yeah. I mean, particularly I remember during COVID, people thought New York City was over, and it came back strong. It came back strong after, what's his name, the last leftist who ran New York. And I don't think Mamdani will destroy New York. New York is too powerful for him to do that. We'll see. I'll talk more about Mamdani in a future show. Democratic socialism is finally feeling the winds in its sail after decades of struggling in obscurity. I think for a while, but Mamdani is not popular internationally, and democratic socialism is still not popular nationally. And when Mamdani fails, that wind in their sails will be blown out. Mary Aline, did you see that Trump is proposing a tariff dividend, presumably to be paid from all the billions, trillions we've made on tariffs? He is beyond delusion. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Thank you, Mary Aline. Michael, how much dollars to sponsor David Harriman's show? It's time to he gets properly exposed. It'll happen. I don't need dollars for that. It'll happen, but it'll happen when I think the time is right. There's certain reasons why I would rather bide my time for now. Michael, I mean, it's not like if I say stuff, suddenly he will lose whatever following he has. He doesn't have a big following. Almost nobody knows who Dave Harriman is. Almost nobody follows him. So, and the people who do follow him, I'm not going to convince them not to follow him. So there's no, other than, a sense of justice and my personal satisfaction, there's no great, change that's going to happen as a consequence of this. Michael, if infinity isn't real, why is it useful in mathematics? Is some math just rationalistic Platonic forms? No, because it is usual. Sometimes you can conceive of something that is a potentiality, is not a reality, but a potentiality. And in that sense, it can be useful in mathematics. Think about calculus, where, this is, or parallel lines that, never meet or whatever. And it's convenient to think in terms of infinity when one understands that infinity is a potentiality, not a reality. I think that's right, but a good question to ask Harry when he is on the show. You should make a list of all the good questions to ask Harry and people like that when they visit the show, because often you guys don't have enough questions. Lincoln. Also, a stock market growing faster than economic growth isn't necessarily a good thing and could be a sign of a bubble. Stock markets to US GDP ratio is quite elevated. Yeah, I mean, but it's not clear. I mean, a lot of what's happening with the stock market is driven by massive investment in AI. That is probably a bubble, but a productive bubble in the sense that once the bubble bursts, you'll have a lot of infrastructure that's incredibly valuable, and long-term it would be incredibly valuable. But the stock market is the most successful companies, and often the biggest companies and they're big because they're successful. And their performance is not always indicative of the performance of small and medium-sized businesses in the economy. There could be a divergence there, which is not healthy, but it could happen. Equal to reality. News from the UK. The High Court has backed people's rights to criticize Islam. Oh my God. What a shock. Basically, Islamic blasphemy law out in the UK. Good. I mean, that is a real relief that the court ruled that way and not the opposite. There's still a way to go, to establish full freedom of speech in the UK, but this is a definitely a step in the right direction. And did you happen to see that an Objectivist podcast outed the leaker of the Leonard and Kira phone call? Yes. Well, I didn't see that. Somebody told me who the leaker was. But again, I'm not paying too much attention to all of that. But yeah, somebody told me who the leaker was. I assume the person who told me was right. But as you know, I don't really want to talk about it. Lincoln. Other than it's horrible to leak a private phone call. It's just horrible. It's illegal. It's literally illegal in California to record a private phone call. And then to leak it is just horrible behavior. And it's just, I just don't think it's acceptable. I don't care almost what the circumstances are. I'd love someday to have Yaron speak at the University of Arizona in Tucson in 2026. Well, either someday or 2026. Hopefully I can work something out with the political philosophy department to set up a date. Yeah, talk to them. I'm happy to come and speak. I doubt the philosophy department will do it, but maybe you can find a student club on campus that will invite me. But if they say yes, we will find a date. Neil says Ahmad el-Shawa meeting Trump at the White House is sad, pathetic. It's ridiculous. Ahmad el-Shawa is the current president of Syria. He's an authoritarian thug. He can join the club of authoritarian thugs meeting with Trump. But what's unique about him is he was a member of Al-Qaeda, was one of the founders of ISIS, was a real barbarian, has I think the blood of American soldiers on his hands, and now is the president of Syria and embraced by the U.S. and has told everybody that he is moderated, that he's a new man, that he's moderate, that not to worry about him, he's one of the good guys. Yeah, right. All right, guys, that is the show. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you to all the people who did stickers. I think I thanked you personally, all of you. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Clay, who came in with $100 out of nowhere. Thank you, of course, Wes, for the $50. I will see you all probably tomorrow. If I'm not completely falling apart from exhaustion, I will try to do a show tomorrow. All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.